Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending Supervising Peer Support Specialist. My name is Heather Brandt, and I'm a lead administrator with the North Dakota Behavioral Health Division. Our scheduled training time today goes from 1 to approximately 4. Last training we did in this modality, we finished a little bit early. As I was talking to you all earlier, one of my hopes for today is that we have an opportunity to have a discussion, not just a one-way training where I'm talking at you. We have a couple options for interaction during today's training. One of those options includes a chat feature. So if you see there's a little chat box and it says show conversation, typically we have some very great conversations during these trainings, and that's a great place if you're not comfortable speaking out loud, or if you don't want to speak out loud, you can just go ahead and enter your question or comment into that chat box, and I would encourage each of you to do that. In addition, we also have the raise your hand option. So there's too many people today in the training for us to just be free chatting. So when you have a comment or a question and you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand option and I will go ahead and call on you. If I don't call on you right away, it might be because I'm finishing a sentence or a thought, but I will make a point to call on you. So I just saw Matt's hand raise. Matt, did you have a comment or question, or were you just testing it out? He's muted. All
No, I was just testing it. I put it back down. We're good.
awesome. Great, great. We're going to have an opportunity today to hear from some community organizations as well. So it's really about learning together and growing together as professionals working in the field and helping support and promote the use of peer support specialists in North Dakota and across the country. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share the presentation with you all here. Now, each of you should have also received this manual um, in an email attachment that I sent to you earlier. Now, that manual is yours, and if there are any other documents that I referenced today, or if you're looking for any additional resources in regards to hiring or supervising peer support specialist, please reach out to us. Some of the other questions that we get are around certification of attendance. So at the end of the training today, we will have a link that we will put in the chat. And in that link, you will take a survey. And once you complete the survey, that will give you, we will send you a certification. So you can keep that for your training records. So if you're looking for CEUs or anything like that, that should meet that requirement. So again, I wanted to introduce myself and let you know who I am. I'm Heather Brandt. I'm with the North Dakota Behavioral Health Division. I also have a few other employees from the Behavioral Health Division on today's call. Um, and if there's any questions regarding any other behavioral health needs in North Dakota, you can reach out to any one of us at any time and hopefully we can point you in the right direction. So today's training is really designed to answer 4 questions. What is the purpose of supervision and what is the role of the supervisor? What is the role of the peer specialist and where and how can they most effectively be used? The question, if peer specialists are not supervised any differently than anyone else, why are we having this training? And then we're going to talk about what constitutes a quality relationship between a supervisor and peer support specialist and how this relationship is developed and sustained. And really, supervision of peer support specialists is most effective when that peer specialist supervisor is trained in quality supervision skills, understands and supports the role of peer specialists, advocates for peer specialists and peer specialist services across the organization, promotes the growth of the peer specialist, and understands and promotes recovery. Okay, so just a little history about peer supports, and many of you that have went through the peer support training program in North Dakota are already aware of this. But the first Medicaid billable peer specialist certification program was held in Georgia in October 2001. So here we are 19 years later, and the program has spread, and this indicates 34. It's now 35 states. So there's an estimated 18 to 20,000 certified peer support specialists who are able to bill Medicaid for their services. In 2013, President Obama requested that the Veterans Administration train and hire 800 new peer specialists. And I've had the opportunity to come up and work with many of those peer specialists in Fargo at our VA here. And currently, there are around 2,000 veteran peer specialists. All right. So initially, peers were hired to work on ACT and CST teams, and there were peer support day programs in Georgia. But peer support specialists are now working in many areas, including outreach programs for homeless, for individuals making transitions from jails and prisons, transferring from mental hospitals to community, or supporting youth as they move from adolescence to young adulthood. And since this report, Idaho and Hawaii were added to this list. So that's 34, 35, 36. But we can now celebrate and add North Dakota to that list. So that would actually bring us to 37. So I'm excited. Look at peer supports are taking over the country. It should be fully purple in a few years. So, what has the Appalachian Consulting Group learned in 15 years from 40 plus states? This is the list of the four most important things that they have learned, which may or may not be true for your agency. Oftentimes, agencies hire peer specialists without thinking through why they are being hired or what special gifts and abilities they bring to the agency and where they can most effectively be used. So there's not a lot of planning often done. Sometimes it's that, oh, we need it to comply, or we're going to add a peer support specialist. And that's a mistake that many agencies make. Some agencies believe that because of their lived experience, peer specialists bring a perspective, a set of gifts and abilities to the agency that have not traditionally been present. So they've learned through implementation that those peers really bring a unique perspective. They're understanding, they're less judgmental, there's that connection with those consumers. Peer specialists thrive in agencies that understand and that are committed to recovery. Today, we're going to highlight just a couple of those organizations, but we have many organizations across North Dakota that are committed to recovery. And we're going to talk about what those agencies have and the support that they bring to really show their commitment to recovery. And lastly, it's been shown over and over again that that supervisor is the key to incorporating this peer specialist workforce into the provider's workplace. So here's where we're going to kind of start to getting into our discussion and talking about things as a group. So agencies often hire peer support specialists without thinking through why they're being hired, what special abilities they bring to the agency, and where they can most effectively be used. What are some difficulties this could cause for the supervisor? So if an agency hires a peer support specialist without thinking through why they're being hired or what they are going to bring to the agency or where they can most effectively be used, if you were supervising that peer, what difficulties do you think you would have?
And not knowing what their job expectations are.
Yeah, exactly. What are you supervising them? What are they supposed to be doing, right? There's no clarity there for you as a supervisor. Sherry?
What skill levels do they have, like mental health wise? What experience does that peer support person bring into the job that they will be able to bring, like chemical dependency, military background, things like that, that's going to actually benefit that agency, things
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, what are those unique and special abilities that that peer support you're hiring is bringing to your agency? That's so important. Is there any other comments on how that would be difficult for a supervisor? I just was thinking, oh, Nancy, go ahead. Just have to hit unmute, Nancy. Well, and along those same lines, I thought that there was really like it's confusing with roles. So as a supervisor, one of the biggest things is you want to understand the roles of the individuals you're supervising. So then what difficulties would this cause for you as a peer support specialist? So if you were working for an agency that didn't spend a lot of time thinking through these questions, like what special abilities they bring, where they can most effectively be used, how do you think that would feel as a peer and what difficulties would that cause? Matt?
It's going to cause a lot of controversy. It's just on both levels. I know from my experience with the peer support specialist that I was working with before, it's being matched up with somebody that actually you can relate with, and I guess not understanding your role too.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be hired on and not know what you're doing. I mean,
Right, that role confusion again, or possibly getting matched with a person that doesn't meet your like lived experience or demographics. That could happen. Yeah. Tara?
Said what I was going to say.
Okay. That means we're all thinking along those same lines, right? All right. I also had not feeling valued. I think one of the things that we all look for in our jobs is we like to feel valued, right? And if we don't know where we're supposed to be or what we're supposed to be doing, you might not feel valued. I actually put not providing peer support services because if agencies maybe aren't using you in the right places, you might not even be providing those peer support services. Melissa, did you have a comment? No? All right. So moving along. So at the end of our peer specialist training, we asked the participants two questions. First, when in your recovery journey could you have most benefited from the service of a peer specialist? And second, if you were the CEO of a traditional mental health agency and you hired 3 peer specialists, where would you place them in your agency? What would you have them do and why? And as a result of those questions, we developed some areas that we highlighted. So again, this one states as early as possible in the diagnostic process in admissions. So from you all participating today, what would they peer be able to do in that location that a traditional staff is not currently doing? Kayleen, you're still muted, Kayleen.
I just think, as a not recovery myself, I just think it's really important that they have someone that they can relate to, that understands where they are and where they need to be or where they want to be. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I heard you kind of say like they can connect with them on a different level than somebody that doesn't have that lived experience. Yes.
Oh, you said it much better.
Got a few more hands up here. Sherry?
Well, I went through a training regarding opiates and stuff, and it was talking about how much opiates and stuff have taken over, and the fact that because of the COVID, we don't have like the support for people with chemical dependency. So that could be something where having that person who's had the peer support that's gone through chemical use could be a value as in this person to talk to and the peer support at this time during all this COVID issues and stuff and being isolated too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that would be a good way too, because you can't always see your therapist or counselor because of the COVID and social distance. The peer support, being able to Zoom like we are doing now or
Hmm.
things like that
Yes.
would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Thank you, Sherry. They can really enhance those clinical services, is what I heard you saying, and they can connect with that person when that therapist might not be able to. Yeah, thank you. Tara?
So I'm looking at it like if someone's coming into Breathe Through Recovery and they don't want or they don't think support, having a peer support there during that intake, diagnostics admissions process, having a peer support there, they might realize that, hey, yes, I do want a peer support, or that they might connect with somebody better, and to help further along their recovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like a lot of people think maybe they don't want that peer support in their life. Like they think I have enough people in my life, but they don't always, once they kind of see the face of that peer or get to hear that peer's recovery story, a lot of times they are very excited to engage with that peer, has been my experience as well. Yeah, and one other note I took from that section stated that that peer specialist can really focus on the impact of the illness and not the symptoms. So often during that diagnostic intake assessment, clinicians are focused on symptoms and what's happening, what your symptoms are, where that peer could really be focusing on the impact of the illness more so outside of those symptoms. What about when a person moves from one level of service to another? So maybe they are moving down from residential to the community, or they're moving down from, you know, 20 hours a week to, a couple hours a week. Oh, can you guys still see my screen okay? Thumbs up?
Mhm.
Okay, great. What would be the benefit of having a peer there? Michelle?
Hello. You can reassure them that someone will be there. We just not gonna just let them drop from 20 hours down to minimum of 5 hours. That somebody is gonna be there. They'll have somebody to support them through their transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. You're going to be there for them no matter what, right? Carly?
Someone there to kind of help in that buffer, in that middle area, to get them to the right resources and to just show them which way to go to continue on the recovery process.
Yeah, just kind of be that source of direction and guidance and buffer from that higher level to those lower levels. Yeah. Nancy? Wish I could unmute you, but I can't.
And
There you are, Nancy. Nice to hear your voice.
hello, hello. I
Hi.
was saying just to assure them that the peer support will be with them throughout their treatment experience, not just because now that they're changing levels of care doesn't mean that the individual is going away. They'll need them probably more with more time to fill.
I like that. I like that because treatment is not just an 8 week recovery is not just an 8 week program. We all know that, and so it kind of is. It's reaffirming that recovery is that lifelong process of change, not just a program. Right. Good. All right. I'll just talk about a couple more. We'll highlight those. What about as a member of a crisis team? What can a peer support person do as a member of a crisis team that maybe those traditional staff are not currently doing or don't do? Sherry?
They would be more knowledgeable about what's going on and where things are versus the crisis team who only probably sees them once a month or once every so often, or the peer support person sees them more often and can tell them what's going on and why they feel the way they're doing and
Okay.
feel like there's a crisis.
Yeah. So let's even think about that, even if let's say that there weren't a person that normally worked with them as a peer support specialist. They were a peer support specialist on that crisis team. They maybe weren't familiar with them. What do you think that peer support specialist could do that traditional staff isn't doing? Nancy?
I believe that you just talk a different language with them sometimes.
Mhm.
instead of sometimes it's technical terms, say,
Yes.
you've done this before, you can do this again.
Mhm.
And just a different approach, I believe.
Yeah, the language is important. I like Erica said, just that comfort of someone knowing who knows what they're going through. And Tara said, you can literally say, I know this sucks because I've been there.
Hmm.
Michelle?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I had an experience with that. And the young lady had never really worked with me like that. Um,
Mhm.
but the clinician, I guess she was having a crisis. She wanted to kill herself. And
Mhm.
so what I did was I build on her strengths. I brought her to and from her psychiatrist appointments. And I didn't even know that she was feeling that way because she was very excited, about going to see her psychiatrist. But then, I guess after a session, it opened up a lot of feelings and emotions for her. And I guess she got honest and shared with her psychiatrist that she really wasn't feeling as good as she might have sound. So
Mhm.
I build on her strengths because one time I brought her in with her baby, and I
Mhm.
let her know that she didn't want to go to the hospital, and
Mhm.
she wanted to go home and just lay down and sleep it off. And it was a from the boyfriend. The boyfriend was at work, and it's a duty to warn. So we didn't want to. The psychiatrist didn't want her to go home and be by herself, knowing that there was a gun in the house. So I
Mm.
built on the strengths of what me and her would kind of like discuss. So she likes spirituality. One time I picked her up, I had on some spiritual music, and I
Mm.
asked her, was it offensive or did she mind? Did I change it or keep it on? And she loved it. So I build on just, what I knew about her, because I didn't know a lot about her until this particular crisis availed itself. And I was given permission from the clinician to ask her, is it okay that I know what's going on and why is
Mm.
why she
Mhm.
feeling the way she's feeling. So to make a
Yeah.
long story short, is basically to build on their strengths that they have.
Yeah, as a member of that crisis team, maybe you're going to spend more time on those strengths and less time on those symptoms again. That's wonderful, Michelle. Glad to hear
Thank
that
you.
story.
Thank you.
Lastly, I'd just like to talk about in hospitals, jails, and prisons. What value do you think the peer support can add there that traditional staff is not currently doing? And I don't know if most of you are aware, but in our North Dakota state prisons, we have trained peer support specialists, and they're working in there now, and we're working to continue to spread those across all institutions in North Dakota. And I see that Lisa McPherson is going to make a comment there. So go ahead, Lisa.
Hi. Yeah,
Hey.
I would just say that we have found that a lot of times the residents are more comfortable talking to another resident that has the lived experience, and that they can really obviously relate more to being incarcerated and to dealing with that stressor. Of course, other peer support specialists have dealt with their own lived experience, but being incarcerated is it just adds to them with the comfort level. And
Mm-hmm.
we found a lot of success with that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear from you and glad that you're here today. So
Thank you.
Lisa's been a person that's really helped support those efforts in our North Dakota prison. So appreciate that. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. So we're going to continue to move on, but as you can see here, this worksheet here really can help you see what, if you're with any of these types of organizations, what value that peer support specialists can bring to those areas and what they can do that traditional staff maybe are not currently doing. And then the next page just really goes in depth more of that, more of those discussions. And so you can use these as a tool with your agencies or if you're looking at incorporating peers in any of those areas. Okay, so moving on, we're on page number 10. It's called Learning Number 2. Oh, I have one more question for you guys. I almost missed it. Right here. Number one, does where we place the peer support specialist and what we expect of them allow them to use their lived experience to help their peers set, get, and keep goals that the peer believes will improve the quality of his or her life? That's a very important question to ask yourself when you're placing peer support specialists in your agency. If the answer is no, then this position and task might not be designed for a peer support specialist. And then the second question is, can someone without a lived experience with a mental illness do the expected work just as well? If the answer is yes, then the position and task might not be designed for a peer support specialist. So what my hope is that you guys can use these tools while you're incorporating peers into your workforce or agency. Or maybe if you've already incorporated peers, maybe you need to be, if you're answering yes to these, then maybe the agency can work on realigning job duties or rebuilding job descriptions or enhancing the experience of that peer support specialist in that organization. Okay, so now we're moving on to learning number 2. So learning number 2 states, because of their lived experience, peer specialists bring a perspective and a set of abilities to the agency that have not traditionally been present in most agencies. There are 2 statements that seem to hold the perspective of the peer specialist and how it might differ from that perspective of a traditional mental health clinician when providing services. Number 1, I just love these. While symptoms can disrupt a person's life, the greatest impact of a mental illness is often a sense of loss and disconnection. And 2, what you believe about yourself because you have a mental illness is often more disabling than the illness itself. As we stated earlier, most mental health providers are trained to focus on reducing the symptoms and the disruptive behavior of the illness. Peer specialists are trained to focus on reducing, peer specialists are trained to focus on instilling hope and reconnecting people with those things that once gave them a sense of meaning and purpose. So, as a group, we're going to kind of walk through a couple of these, and then individually, you can answer some of these questions later. But what is the difference in focusing on the symptoms and behavior of the illness versus the loss of hope and the sense of disconnection that is a result of the illness? Kind of have to read that question a couple of times from my experience when I was trying to answer it. What's the difference? How would that feel different if you were a consumer? For me, I said it really stirs a connection between the consumer and the other person, the peer. It's going to feel different. It's not typical. Erica, very good comment. Focusing on the symptoms is not addressing the root of the illness, right? Exactly. I'm glad to hear from you, Erica. I miss seeing you. COVID has made everybody so we don't see each other anymore. Anybody else have any comments or any input there? Sherry?
I'm sorry.
Hmm.
Um, this illness is only part of who you are. You gotta focus on the other things that you can do, and how maybe how the illness makes you a better person, and focus on the strengths of who you are, and not so much on the illness. And
Hmm.
that there's good days and bad days, just like everybody else.
Right.
And it's no different than having, say, diabetes or blood clots or
Hmm.
I don't know, cancer, things like
Yeah.
that.
So
Is
that, yeah, that peer can really emphasize that illness is really just only a small part of who you are, and it can really help stir that sense of belonging. And maybe for a lot of people, I hear like who I used to be, and sometimes people feel like they've lost that piece. I appreciate that, Carly.
It puts a face to the hope that and everything, that someone can walk the walk, and that it just makes it feel like it's doable, or that it's not just words, it's someone there that they can relate to and that they can follow.
There is nothing truer than that. It's like a face to the hope, right? It's like, wow, they've done this, and there's a lot of hope in that, and being that person face to face. That's great. What has your education and or experiences taught you about the traditional clinician client relationship?
You're just a number.
Okay, so some of that feeling like you are just a number. Nancy?
Oftentimes they feel as though the clinician is someone in power. They have
Okay.
the ability to make changes in that individual's life that could be detrimental.
Yeah, they kind of see them as that authority or that power.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I had some comments about formal. It's a formal relationship, or it's a office setting type of relationship. That you come to me also type of relationship. Oh, Kyle wrote a comment. Oh, Shay wrote some too here. Great. Oh, I got a lot of comments. You guys are awesome. Us versus them. Sometimes there's that mentality. Feeling like we're spoken at by clinicians versus speaking to with a peer. Yeah, maybe more scripted, less person centered. That's great. And this is a no. We have clinicians that are attending with us today, and if those clinicians haven't had the opportunity to maybe go to some of the peer support trainings, we're by no means bashing clinicians. We love many of those clinicians, and they play an integral role in many of our recoveries, or people's recoveries. And so that's not the purpose of this, or the reason why we cover it. It's just to really highlight what those peers can do for a team, that doesn't currently exist, maybe. All right. And then it talks about what is the foundation for this relationship? What are some of the principles or guidelines for the traditional clinician client relationship? Sherry said, that's good. I'm also an LBSW. I am too, Sherry. Yeah, Michelle wrote confidentiality. There's a lot of rules around confidentiality, with some of those principles or guidelines.
Can you repeat that question? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, it just states, what is the foundation for the traditional clinician client relationship? What are some of the principles or guidelines?
That basically you rarely know. It's being a social worker, coming in as a social worker, we have to do ethical things like we have ethical boundaries we can't cross and do no harm, things like that. So it kind of has that wall there, and we don't really disclose things, which is a lot different than as a peer support type
Mhm.
person.
So I really want to highlight something she just talked about, and it was self-disclosure. In peer support training, we learn how people learn how to share their recovery dialogue, right, as a tool. That's not something that I was taught in traditional school for social work or any type of counseling, is how to share your recovery dialogue as a tool. Um, Peer support specialists also
We're
have.
taught to rarely share that information.
Mhm. Yeah, peer support specialists, we have ethics, boundaries. We talk about that. We have a code of ethics. And so I do believe that, we have those as well, but that looks different, right? Yeah, treat symptoms and usually cannot disclose. Thank you, Tanya. I'd love to see your face too, Tanya. I'm glad to see that you're in that chat box, though. She's got lots of good input for us. All right. And then what is the difference in a traditional clinician client relationship and a peer specialist peer relationship? So we should have lots of comments here. Michelle?
Um, Let me see. What's the difference in traditional clinician? Um,
Mhm.
Clinicians, they kind of like formal, and peer supports are more like we um we share our lived experience because we can identify and relate, with the peer, as opposed to the clinician may can't open up and say, "Hey, I'm just like you." You know what I'm saying? They got to
Yeah,
keep it more on a formal level,
I
professional
do.
formal level.
I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, that peer support specialist, one of the big thing is they don't have to worry about diagnosing either, right? They don't have to worry about that. That's a big difference. There's less monitoring as well. They're not, monitoring for med compliance like a clinician might be. Here's we got a couple great comments. With the peer specialist relationship, you feel like you have a say and a voice in your own life. It gives you a sense of ownership. I love that. That's very powerful. Here, Tara, clinicians have read about the condition. A peer has the experience. There's nothing more powerful than that. Christy, I love how peers can enjoy and share more moments together versus a traditional clinician client relationship. Clinicians are viewed more as suits, so on a different level, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing I was gonna say is a lot of times clinicians or anyone like social workers and therapists, they're all kind of viewed as suits and all dressed up, so they're like the power, and they don't get us because they're the suits and everything, so they don't are supposed to know better than everyone else. So I like that, which is
Mhm.
true. That's how I always saw them until I
Mm,
became a social worker and realized just because I'm a social worker doesn't mean I have to wear a suit. I
mhm.
can wear jeans and a t-shirt and be just as same with them and not talk down to them, but
Mhm.
talk the same as them.
Mhm. Yeah, Gerald. Great to hear from you too. Go ahead, Gerald. Got to unmute.
I know. I'm trying to unmute.
We got you there, bud.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Oh, you can hear me, huh?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay. This is my first time ever doing something like this, so be patient.
I'm
So
glad.
anyway,
Mhm.
it's been a while. What I'm thinking about, when you talk about clinical and being a peer mentor, I think that kind of entitles you to have both kind of responsibilities. Because if they're going in the wrong direction and you realize that behavior is going to take them something legally, you know what I mean, in the wrong
Mhm.
direction, you got to help them understand that you don't want to go there. So
Mhm.
in a sense, you're almost like a social worker working with them, but being their friend or being their peer support system, and that in itself creates a trust issue. And when they start trusting you, you can help them redirect themselves as a social worker, saying, you know what, I've been down this road. This is what's going to happen, and that's how you connect. Because sometimes they're going to have bad days, and sometimes they're not going to make the right choice. And as a supervisor and a peer support specialist, you contain both those entitlements for yourself. You help them stay away and avoid those situations. That's how I see it.
So you can kind of say, I've walked this road before and I've seen those signs and I'm worried you're heading down a risky road and I've
Right.
been
If you've been
there.
on
Mhm.
right, if you've been on probation or you've been
Mhm.
you're under wait that what do they call that one program where they have to go and take a breathalyzer every day
Oh,
and
day reporting.
yeah, whatever they call
Mhm.
that, they have that judge thing doing. I've been working
Mhm.
with those guys. They're always trying to get by on those things, but once you build that trust relationship, I think that's the biggest thing. You build that trust, and then they can understand the legal aspects of things or the clinical aspects of things, because that
Yeah.
is what helps them understand. You've done this before. We've been here, and you
Mhm.
got to learn a little bit about the social behavior of someone, because you're not
Yeah.
going to if you just befriend them. You're just going to walk right down that path with them, or you might just enable them to do what they're doing.
So
And
you've, yeah.
we're not here for that.
And Erica commented, Gerald, to you, and she said, I loved that trust. So how important building that trust is in that peer role. So that's great. Thank you for speaking up. It's great to hear from you. Haven't seen you in a
Yes.
while.
Yes.
All right. So we're moving on. After we go through learning number 3, we'll take a little break where we can get up, we can leave our computers and use the restrooms or grab a drink or a snack. I try to kind of facilitate this the same way that we would a traditional training. All right. Let's see here. So moving on, learning number 3. Peer support specialists thrive in agencies that understand and are committed to recovery. If you were to visit an agency that was focused on recovery, what would you see going on? How would you know that that agency understood and was committed to recovery? Nancy?
I would see active participants, people maybe moving through the hallways on their way to their next group with smiles on their face.
Mhm. So activity, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle?
That's what I was gonna say, but she took the words out of my mouth, so that's fine.
That's great. Open conversation taking place on the topic, a sense of community. I'm reading chat right now. So, a sense of community, an organization focusing on all aspects of recovery versus just one. Staff who care about the clients. Yes. Some of my thoughts were connections to the community, uh, promoting health, wellness, employees that believe in recovery. How can we be an agency that believes in recovery if our employees don't believe in recovery? Yeah, Tanya said that. I was going to say promoting wellness and community. When you go to treatment, you're still part of the community. Michelle?
Uh, I just want to say you absolutely right when you say, how can we have a, say we believe in peers and recovery. This is my first peer job, and I experienced working for a company, and anytime you talked about recovery to the peers, the director would have a fit about it. So I felt like I was in the wrong place for the job. So moving forward, I'm going somewhere that has more groups, more they target more specific areas of like marijuana, gambling, opiates, recovery housing. It has more, but I believe they I'm glad I'm taking this, but I believe they do believe in recovery. But she didn't believe in recovery, and the program just folded, so I just got laid off on the 30th. So
Mm,
maybe that's why.
hmm So you're looking for that job where when you get there, you can tell that agency's focused on recovery. That's good. hmm Any other things that you guys see when you walk into an agency? Are you here? Oh, Tara has some here. Openness to spontaneous, in-depth dialogue. Yeah, I definitely know your team does not shy away from that. That's great. I enjoy that. Uh, no shame or stigma. Openness to vulnerability. Yeah, I think you can tell a lot about an agency and their recovery and how they treat their employees too. Being real instead of a textbook, asking questions, creating that approachable environment, caring, judgment free, willingness to collaborate. Mm, that's really good. Sherry, do you have any other comment? You had another comment there?
Oh, I guess when I started down the path with depression and stuff and the mental health and stuff, I always view people with suits and everything like that, you know, but I found through experience that you don't always meet the first person or second to be the good one. You will go through some good and bad therapists for whatever reason, personality. And I think you kind of need a peer support to kind of help you with that, to help express that. And sometimes you need that peer support to come in. So I think you have to also learn to take control of that self too, and knowing that not everyone has to be dressed to the nines and everything to be that way. So to be open to all possibilities, and to me, always think of if I'm going someplace for therapy and that, I want them to be more like me, the average me, not the person all suited up and dressed to the nines. Because to me, it's like, you have no clue what I'm going through if you can dress like this. So, but then people dress to the nines too who do drugs. So, hey.
Yeah. Well, I like to dress nice too, Sherry. So I hope that that doesn't. I
Well,
just had to
no,
throw.
and
I'm
but this
kidding
is
you.
back when I was 18, and even
Oh,
now, so
yeah,
it all depends upon the
yeah,
population.
yeah.
If you're gonna be with the Club Med or on Skid Row, it all kind of varies with the
Yes,
population. You
yes.
know, you got to determine which population you're going to work with,
You need to
and
be able
bring
to
more.
connect with people and be aware of
Yeah,
your appearance and how that could maybe impact that.
yeah.
Definitely.
So you
Thank you,
kind of want
Sherry.
to dress to their level.
Yeah, yep. I can see what you're saying. Gerald,
Yes.
hit unmute one more time, bud.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, all right. We tend to go into those buildings, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I like to say is that what are you bringing when you go in that building? What is your spirit intent? What are you trying to, you know what I mean? If you're there to judge and be judgmental, you're gonna kind of bring a wrong mentality. And when you bring that wrong mentality, you're not gonna recognize, you're just gonna see one-sided prejudice. You know what I mean? Oh, they're just that way. And you got to get know people, and that's why I call it the spirit intent. And when you bring that, you bring a more soothing and connection with people, and
Yeah.
then you can understand their program, what they're trying to do, and then they can fit into your mentality or your mold of what you're trying to bring. Because yes, we will clash, but if you find that spirit intent where you connect, that aura, you will find those areas where you can help, and you can find those areas where you can be involved in, and you can find those areas where you need to work and change on yourself. That's what it's all about, connecting. and
Yes.
and by recognizing that, you adjust to that behavior or that system or that organization. Adjustment.
Yeah.
That's what I
What
gotta say.
what what were you coming there to bring? That's a great way to put it. Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
And so, why do you think sports specialists do well in these environments? These environments foster the spark of hope needed for recovery to happen. The spirit of healing, not just treating the illness and leading others by example. Perfect. Because of our transparency. That's what I love most about you. hmm I have
Well, I
a.
know we're a peer run group here at the door, and
Uh-huh.
I think it's our relatability that
Yeah.
causes that comfort.
hmm
There's five of us here, and we all have different devils, different demons that we've conquered.
hmm
So it provides a direct approach to all walks of life that come through our door.
hmm
And we're all pro recovery. We're all at different stages of our recovery. So I
hmm
think when you walk into our environment, it's um, it's based on comfort. We have a living space, a kitchen, we recreation area, and
Yeah.
and I think we're all pro recovery, and that effort is to cause you some type of or to bring some type of comfort level. And we all provide, like I said, that relatability to one of us at some, because of our areas of um, where we've come from.
Yeah, Samantha, I've caught a few of your guys' discussion groups too on Facebook Lives. Need to try and catch some more of those. Those are really great to listen to and be able to hear you all there at the door. You're doing a great job.
Thank
Uh,
you. Yeah, my favorite was I guess I'm impartial too. My son spoke on being a child of an addict,
mm,
and there were things that I didn't even know, you know. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I like our Facebook lives. We're really
I do
kind of going
too.
forward with that.
Yeah, I think those are great. Thank you. And a
Yes.
lot of our chats talk about this. We have been through the system and know what to expect. We're resourceful with genuineness. That's great. They feel comfortable to relate and identify. Yes, good. I put promotes ongoing hope and positivity. I feel less judged because I think even somebody as a peer support specialist going into a traditional clinical environment might have a fear of being judged. And so um, if in those recovery environments, they're going to feel less judged, hopefully, and more supported. So great. All right. Well, it's about 2 o'clock. We've been going on here for about an hour. I think everybody could use a 10-minute break. So if you guys want to get up, use the restrooms, I'll stay on here for a little bit. And you guys, if you have any questions or comments, feel free. But we'll resume at 2:10. We'll see you then. Okay. Well, it is 2:10. So I have no idea who is back into their desks or participating in the training since we're not in a group session, but I'm going to go ahead and be respectful of everyone's time and get started today. Again, thank you for returning and thank you for participating. It makes it so much more fun and engaging for all of us to have discussion. We're going to talk just very briefly about certification in North Dakota. Hopefully, answer any questions if people have those about certification, and also just link you to those resources if you had any questions about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen one more time here. If I can figure it out. It's nothing like being on the spot to make something not want to work right. Alrighty. Right here, actually. Let me try this again here. Hmm. Well, this is fun. For some reason, it's not coming up right here. Hold on. Just going to close something and try again. Someone types, so glad I'm off from my tech job for the next month. Is that Samantha? When it works right, it's great. When it doesn't work right, it's not so great. Okay, we're going to try this a different way. Just hope it works. Oh, no, it's me, Sherry. All right, here we go. Don't know what I'm doing incorrectly, but it's not working. All right, well, I'm not going to share that screen then. But the content I was going to share with you all is around the behavioral health website and peer support. So I'm just going to put that link into the chat. On our website there, you will see links to training. So we have some upcoming trainings in December and January for peer support. Some of you, I believe, are registered or might be registered or know people that are registered. We will be in contact with those individuals very soon. We're actually moving to a virtual platform. Even from the small groups that we've been doing, just to be very we're just trying to promote safety. And so if there's any individuals that are having difficulty accessing due to technology, hopefully we can help connect them to some resources. But with where we've moved to the COVID levels within the state, we didn't really know how we could safely facilitate those groups across the state of North Dakota. So if you're already registered, we'll be in contact with you, or if you and we'll let you know the plan to continue to do that. We talk about our 2 levels of certification in North Dakota. So the Peer Support Training 1 and the Peer Support Training 2. I just, um, there's a couple people that are messaging me that say they can't get into the training, that they're in the chat, Christy. So, are they trying to get admitted into the meeting? I don't know if you can see that. I don't see anybody waiting, but they're stating that they're there. So levels of certification, the 1 and the 2, the only difference in those really is that the 2 has the experience in providing peer support services and is engaged in either this supervision training or another supervision training. Um, they can be a peer supervisor then. They also meet all of the requirements of Medicaid supervision as well. We also have a video on peer support there. So there's a webinar if you have questions about the certification process. And any questions, just please reach out to peer support at nd.gov and we should be able to connect you rather quickly to those resources you need to complete your certification. Some people have asked about, why do I want to be certified, or what's the benefits of being certified? And with all of our reimbursement currently in North Dakota, so the Free Through Recovery and the expansion of Free Through Recovery, and Medicaid, when all of that's kind of operating as it should be, those things require certification of peer supports. And so if you're not currently supervised and you're interested in becoming supervised and have questions on that, please reach out. All right, well, enough of that. Let's get back to sharing and getting into our training here. That worked well. That one just really wanted to share, but the other one did not want to share. All right. So as we continue to talk about peer support and the incorporation of peer support into the workplace, we talk about the supervisor a lot and the role of the supervisor. Oftentimes, um, many of us have even been supervisors before. We never had any supervisor training. And so we're going to be talking a little bit today about what it means to be a supervisor and the different roles of supervisors. Okay. So we call it the nuts and bolts of supervision. Now, what is supervision? I think for most of us, a lot of people, when they think about supervision, they often think about that administrative role and as being a supervisor. But supervision is defined as a designated interaction between 2 or more professionals within a safe and supportive environment, which enables a process of reflective, critical analysis of care. To ensure quality services, supervision is designed to enhance the knowledge, skills, and attitude of staff. So, supervision typically has 3 widely accepted goals. There's educational supervision, administrative supervision, and supportive supervision. And we'll define each of those and what that means. So, what you do in supervision depends on your goals. If the goal is educational, the supervisor uses demonstration, modeling, discussion, feedback, practice, helps support learning new skills. There's a focus on professional development, really helping providing that individualized training and support. That doesn't mean that you as a supervisor have to be an expert in all those areas, but you can also help the person that you're supervising in connecting them to those resources to meet their professional goals. Um, Providing that avenue for the peer support to get further professional development and really helping them find structured learning experiences. There's so many great resources online. Christy recently shared one through Tax. It was just a great training about incorporating and supervising peer support specialist. SAMHSA. Sign up for all of those alerts and they will send you great trainings. Many of them are free. The addiction training and technical, it's ATTC is the acronym. I always forget what that stands for in North Dakota, but they also have a lot of great resources for peer support specialists and supervision of peer support specialists in North Dakota. If the goal is administrative, the administrative supervision is typically focused on the effective implementation of the agency's policies and procedures. It's really a management of their performance. So, what's your workload like? The payroll, time off, those types of things. Using time effectively, how you're keeping up with your records, and those types of things. If the goal is to be supportive, the supervisor works to improve the employee's performance to increase their coping skills, to prevent stress, burnout. You want to be focusing on morale, job satisfaction, really giving people some more feedback on their work, maybe discussing personal relations to work and how that's working, validating their experiences, providing encouragement. As a supervisor, when you're being supportive, you really should be promoting self-care practices. You can even ask about those things, like how are you utilizing self-care outside of work, or what are you doing to maintain your self-care? And really think of to see like I think you have what it takes to do better. So a lot of times when people are becoming supervisors, there's always been a motto that I've kind of held on to and it's worked for me. But if I'm kind of giving somebody that constructive criticism or feedback, my motto is I'm doing it because I know you can do better. When you're no longer getting feedback or you're no longer hearing that constructive criticism, um, to me, it's like that's just like stale, it's dead. Feedback and criticism is the key ingredient when we know that people can do better or they can keep growing. And so that's been my motto for supervision. So, what is the key ingredient to supervisory success? It's really that relationship between the supervisor and the supervisee. There should be listening. There should be some availability. As a supervisor, you need to be available to your employees. Doesn't mean you have to be available 24/7, but you have to have some availability. Setting goals, being transparent, maintaining responsibility, and being there has to be some realism there. So we talk about, so what about supervision with a peer specialist? I've never done this before, but the truth is many of you already have supervised peers, some without knowing and some knowing. You cannot train them because they have for a lived experience. There is literally no substitute for their lived experience. So we talk about what you're supposed to do. First and always listen like you've never listened before. Get very comfortable with gray. Understand that it's okay not to know. And if you volunteered to supervise a peer specialist, just enjoy the journey and remind yourself that it is that, a journey. Is there any comments, questions, anything as we are moving along here? We'll get back to having more of our interactive here once I get through these PowerPoints. So what am I supposed to do? If you were assigned to supervise, can you openly accept the job? If not, it's okay, but a discussion with your supervisor needs to happen. And are you clear what's expected of you as a supervisor? So this is kind of saying, but you're not telling me what to do. And so, no, we're not. So just as recovery is a journey in a process, so is partnering with a peer specialist. If you think of this as a partnering rather than supervision, you'll have embraced our values, the core value of mutuality. I don't think, hopefully many of you aren't feeling this way, but If you're feeling anxious, just understand the first step in this journey is to establish an understanding or contract about what you're going to be doing together. This is a two-sided discussion. It's a conversation. You can talk about what each of you would like from your initial meetings. So how do I model this? Share that you're a partner, you're a willing ear, you're a supporter and a believer in recovery, and you're a guide in all those things on that professional side. And so, if you're really still anxious, where do we start? What do we do? How is this different? I mean, just start at the job description for the peer support specialist, asking yourself, is it clear? Is it mainly task oriented? Do you need to talk about how the task models or the tasks model or support recovery? And then you're going to need to do some of these things. Agree about how often you're going to meet. Agree on when you're going to meet and where. What do they do when a problem arises or they can't wait? It's not a therapy session for either of you, but it can be a place to vent frustrations or concerns. And we do talk a little about this in many of the other trainings I have went to. They talk like a lot about it as well, but you're not trying to professionalize a peer. You're not trying to make them a mini clinician. We have to be very careful about that. A peer support specialist is a professional career. In the end, the shared goal is really to promote recovery and hope in the individuals you work for. And both of you have equally important but different approaches. And when there's barriers, you need to talk to that peer support and figure out what's preventing them from using that a peer approach. I'm not just going to keep reading all of these. I want to get to some of these highlights here, and then we're going to have a little discussion. What about mental health issues? We talk, there's good opportunities for discussion here. Um, a lot of people, most people believe that peers should not be receiving treatment where they work. Would that be something that you would do? I know there are agencies who have maneuvered that before, um, but it's not ideal. The supervisor is not the peer support specialist therapist. As a supervisor, you're not responsible to enforce treatment or to inquire about it. Um, Talk about it in the beginning if the peer support would like that disability accommodation. Treat it like the flu or a broken leg. Take off your clinician glasses if you're a clinician supervising a peer. So we talk about ethics and boundaries. If there's a concern, talk about it. Share your worries and concerns. We just say it right here, really bluntly. Is having sex with a client okay? No. There's still controversy that always remains about relationships that peers have. Can they have a relationship with the person outside of work? We just say that each agency needs to follow their own policies because agencies are going to have individual policies that are going to vary greatly depending on where the peer support specialist is working. And really keep in mind with all of that what a peer support is. They're a role model, they're walking the walk and showing the way. They're providing that hope and resiliency, practical solutions, and helping the person practice choices. And there's that reciprocity, that mutual partnership. And I really like this slide. It talks about what the peers tell us gets in their way. Oftentimes, it's what we started out with. There's lack of role clarity. They feel the pressure in the organization to gain acceptance. There's a misunderstanding or negative attitudes from other staff, like there might be conflicts over professional routines. And also a very common one is lack of interest from service users. And so if that's some of those barriers that you're running into, reach out to other organizations that are incorporating peers or with Christy, and hopefully you guys can walk through some strategies to help with that. Here's some more barriers that peers talk about. So we really emphasize that it's a journey. You know, in the beginning, review that job description together. Does it reflect that unique role of a peer? Establish that partnership, when you're going to meet, how often you're going to meet, who they're going to reach out to in case of emergency, coverages, and really discuss your expectations, be transparent. And ongoing meetings covering a summary of what you last covered, goals, what are their job stressors, and kind of giving each other feedback. Do you need to change your goals? Any of those topics are great. All right. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to have a couple of groups who have been incorporating peers in North Dakota talk a little bit more about their experiences with peer support specialists, and hopefully open up the table for some open discussions. So we're going to first have Erin Fowler and Tara Gilbert. She's Tara Azure in her chat here, but I believe it's Tara Gilbert now, right, Tara?
It is, yes.
Yes. So we're gonna they're gonna be talking about a discussion here, and we'll start off with Erin. So Erin, do you want to do a little introduction of yourself, and then we'll go into the questions here.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Aaron Fowler. Actually, I attended the first North Dakota care coordination training, and then the peer support training, which was actually the week after that. Have worked with peers one-on-one, and then also been supervising peers pretty much as long as we have had peer support specialists in North Dakota. I'm going to try to think. I think I was the only peer on staff at the organization. Lighthouse Church is where I serve at, and I think I was the only peer on staff for a very short period of time before kind of having to enter into the role of both peer and peer supervisor at the same time. Also a member of long-term recovery myself. I've been sober for a little over 12 years, and also serve as the associate pastor at Lighthouse Church. So just kind of a little background of on me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Erin. So will you talk to us about how supervising peer support specialists is different from supervising non-peer staff?
Yeah. So first thing I would like to say is that in my own experience, it has been so it's completely different than supervising almost anything else out there. So the idea, or pretty much, I would actually say this to somebody who's just starting to supervise is, you know what, a lot of the ideas that you may come in with what the role as a peer support supervisor may look like, I would try to kind of mellow out and allow supervising peers to be what it's going to be. I noticed that in the slides, I especially like that one about navigating the gray. There's a lot of that in working as a supervisor with peer support specialist. One of the interesting things I have found is that, so one, being a peer and supervising a peer it's a unique position. I found it to be quite an adventure, not like anything else that I've really had to do. And so be open to, and I think there's actually a slide about it, be open to walking that journey with the peer as you explore what it means to have peers working in your organization and what it means to supervise them. It is a role in which you come alongside them in helping them do their job and be the best that they can be. Often, I think Heather kind of mentioned it, seeing what they're capable of and then trying to help them develop those skills and utilize them. I will say is that it's interesting is that I actually put down some notes that sometimes, so in a regular, so I'll just say like, so supervising in a regular position, I might hire somebody to do a very specific job. And I kind of have an expectation of them filling this very specific role and handling the affairs of that role. A peer support job is a little bit less defined. than some other roles. And sometimes what I might be looking, so if I hire somebody in another position, I expect them to be, not always expect them to be, but I look to them to be quite ready to fill that position of that role and carry out the duties of that position. With a peer support, with the role not being quite as defined or the box not being quite there around the role, sometimes that doesn't work. And so I'll kind of give an example. So one of the things I always come back to, and this was actually in a training I attended a long time ago, is that if somebody else on in the world can do the position, it's probably not peer support work. And that's one of the things that I really always kind of come back to. And so then I'll just use a real life example. So then a lot of times I have peer supports driving people to appointments. And I'm like, well, that's really not necessarily your guys' job, because anybody can drive somebody to an appointment. But yet in that role of driving somebody to an appointment, amazing things happen when you're stuck in a car with somebody, driving somewhere. Conversation, interaction, relationship, trust is built. So oftentimes from a supervisor role, what may look like the peer is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're actually phenomenally doing their job. And so an understanding or the openness to that has been very important. The other thing is that I have found that peers are very, they want to help. They want to jump in there. They want to help people. So that constant reiteration of what their role is and is not has also been very helpful, because you want to look after your staff. You don't want anybody to get burned out. You don't want somebody to overextend themselves or overcommit themselves into the position. And sometimes that can be, I don't know, I guess it's tempting in your first, when you hire a peer and it's their first time working as a peer support, and they see other people starting to turn their lives around and get better, and find recovery because you know what, they're doing their job, it's working well, the hope is sparking in another individual. But yet also they have to maintain their own healthy boundaries and their own recovery and not get caught up into that. And so that would be one thing. Not that I don't care about all the people that I work or that I actually supervise, but I will say I'm more cautious in making sure that a peer support doesn't burn themselves out or overextend themselves in their position, or work way too many hours. That's something else that they can run into, because actually, yeah, for a very long time now, all of our peer supports have been on salary positions, and so they are responsible to manage their hours within a 40-hour work week. And so sometimes it requires me to be like, you're doing too much. And, is that your role? And is there somebody else we can have doing that?
Great. Thank you, Aaron. So what have you learned about supervising peer support specialists that you would share with a new peer support specialist supervisor? You answered some of that already. You have anything else you would add?
Flexibility. Flexibility in working with them. The other thing too is so sometimes you might hire a peer support and they may have some limitations which don't fit well, say in documentation, in those areas, or some of the other what might be considered like norms per a professional in the behavioral health field, whether it be accounting or documentation or writing, and in some communication skills, right? And they can seem as limitations, but honestly, a lot of times those are also the individual's greatest assets, because of the individuals they are working with struggle or have struggled, or will come to learn that they do struggle in some of the similar areas. And so the way that the peer support that you're employing has overcome those barriers and is still successful in the workplace as an asset to those they are working with. So then as a supervisor, it sometimes comes a role to navigate utilizing those what are assets actually, but also sometimes limitations as far as documentation and means of payment go to your benefit, and coming to understand how to best work with the individual one-on-one. There's no mold I've worked and supervised several peer supports, and every supervision has been unique. Um, from extremely hands-on to rather hands-off in their position. And so I would say, you know what, be flexible, learn the person that you're hiring, and really evaluate how you can best utilize their skills as a peer support specialist within your organization, instead of sometimes having the idea of this is what the person will do and how they will utilize their lived experience to help others. Because how Tara interacts with somebody, or how I do, or Misty, or Sean, or any of the other peer supports working with here, are completely different. But yet it all works because they have lived experience and they relate with certain people better than others. And that's one of the gifts of peer support specialists, is that we have lived experience, that we are so very unique, and we have an understanding of our own recovery journey, and we can relate that to other people.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing that, Aaron. Is there any comments or questions that you guys have for Aaron as a supervisor? Well, if you think of any, don't be afraid to just put them in the chat here. And now we're going to hear from Tara. Tara, if you just want to give a little bit of an overview of yourself, and then we'll get into asking you your questions.
Sure. So my name is Tara. Well, Tara Gilbert now. I was recently married in August. I've been a peer support since April of 2019. Back in 2017, I was making bad choices. I went to prison. I lost my children. I've been working my recovery program. I'm going on 5 years clean and sober, and I have since gotten my children back, and I get to work at Lighthouse with these crazy guys. So.
Awesome. Can you talk about what your supervisor has done that has helped make you a better peer support specialist?
Okay, so a lot of it Aaron kind of touched on, but the way that I'm coming from it is just a little bit different. So supporting our self-care, absolutely. Working where we work, they're constantly, no matter how big or small self-care it is, it's, do you need a 10-second pause today? Then take that 10-second pause. Do you need an hour? Whatever it is, our organization is very big on self-care and making sure that we find gratitude in our day, no matter what kind of day we've had, because without that self-care, that's leading to that leads to that burnout. Our work here promotes teamwork, that we're all part of a team. Nobody is really higher than anybody. You know, there's care coordinators, there's peer supports, but we are essentially a team. We may be working on different things, but we are a team. Right now, Lighthouse supports us in our supervisor supports us in our continuing education, not just CEU credits, but like the Prairie St. John monthly behavioral health CEUs, motivational interviewing. We did a 2-day, Sean, 1 or 2 day motivational interviewing course, which has just completely opened up our open-ended questions. A team philosophy, like right now we're working on our communication. We support strong communication. So like the women's team, we have staffing a couple of times a week just to discuss any of our situations that have come up that we weren't sure how to deal with, or we thought we dealt with very well, that we thought, someone else could benefit from hearing this type of situation. They encourage our transparency. And what's really good about our supervisor is he knows that there's generational, I guess I don't know the word I'm looking for, but intergenerational, right? So the way someone else communicates to someone that's not from the same generation that I am, that they communicate differently than I do, but we can still effectively communicate together. And I like it's kind of crazy how Aaron says, our gifts are lived experience. Well, whoever thought that me going to prison and losing my kids could be a gift, right? Who thought that was something that I could turn into a positive? And so they really, our supervisors really support that no two peers are the same. We all have our own gifts. So.
Yeah, when Aaron said that, that really sat with me too, because you often
Yep.
think about barriers or like difficulties that a person might encounter, but like that difficulty or whatever that barrier was that person has encountered in life is actually the gift that peer support has to offer. So that's really great. So Tara, this one I love asking you guys, but what
Hate
would
this
you
one.
What would you like from your agency that you are currently not getting?
So this is one that I had from before, which we have since started working on, but it is the more in the moment dialogue. So more of those situations that have come about that we don't know what to do, right? So more of that, how can we make our job better as a peer support? What are more things that we could be doing better? What things are we not? It's that feedback part. But then one thing that we came up with was backing our creativity. So at Lighthouse, our supervisors are very they give us freedom. That's the word I'm looking for, to show what recovery really looks like versus me just telling you what recovery looks like, right? So our creativeness. So Misty and Anna are amazing at this. They came up with a swim group. So we went swimming on a Friday afternoon, not as friends, but as peers, getting to know other peers and getting to know other people that are in the recovery process, someone that's just starting out to someone that's been doing it a year, that kind of thing. And our agency really supports that, or having a self-care day. And what does that look like? And we still have to live by those code of ethics and the healthy boundaries, right? But we can still do that and have a good time with our referrals, showing them how to be a part of the community and not just telling them how.
That's great. Thank you, Tara. Are there any questions or comments for Tara and Aaron from the group? We have a comment here. Tara and Aaron, you guys are absolutely fabulous.
Thanks, Christy. You know what's really cool about this is I'm seeing a lot of people that I know before becoming a peer support. So this sense of community right now is just amazing to me. So
that's what I've loved about peer support since I've became involved more in this initiative in North Dakota. So just a little bit about myself. I'm not personally in recovery, but I'm the family member of a person who has experienced a lot of mental health and substance abuse. So since I was probably 11, this has been a part of my life and really, impacted me and my family greatly. And it's been what's really driven me to want to be involved in behavioral health. And so that's where, I had a great advisor at some point in college too that steered me into social work versus accounting. Um, but it kind of makes me a little emotional when I start to think about how welcome and how much fun we have as a group in this peer support world and in free through recovery, and just such a welcoming and great group of people. And so, why we're doing these lessons like this with these community partners is these are the people, this group of people, anybody that's here, they're a resource for all of you. They're people that you can turn to. They're people that we can get together with and ask these questions and support each other and have fun together and just you know be forwarding these initiatives that are changing people's lives in North Dakota. And Erica had a comment here. I know from being a part of this community that your agency does recovery well and really believes. Yes.
So part of that is we understand that what our supervisors kind of push on us is that it's not all about just recovery from addiction. There's the mental health, there's the codependency, there's the depression and anxiety, there's anger, there's all these other things that go into our addictions and our I don't even know the word that I'm looking for, but there's so much more that goes into it that our supervisor understands to get down deep to, it's not just about the addiction. There's so much more that goes into it. And our supervisors are great at reminding of that, of us, and continuing ours. Why don't you go to the anger group? Bring a referral to the anger group tonight. And then you never know, maybe that's something that I could get out of it. I could get so much out of that that I didn't even know that I could get out of that. So
That's great. Thank you so much, Tara and Aaron. We up next we have Chris Chase and Tony Tanner from Real Church. Are you guys there? Hi, Sean. I know that Real Church was a little bit worried about the time, but I know that they're on here. So let's see if I can. They're ready. Oh, I hear them.
Chris isn't here. He had to run somewhere.
Okay. Are you Tony?
Yeah.
It's great to meet you, Tony.
Nice to
Nice
meet
to
you.
see you. Well, we'll just jump right into some of those questions for you. And if you want to do a little introduction and let us know about yourself and where you're at, and maybe a little bit about Real Church, that'd be great, Tony.
Yeah, Chris, my boss, he started Real Church about 2.5 years ago or so, and it's just FTR provider. We also have Celebrate Recovery here, and he's getting ready to start a church. I've been doing peer support for him for a little over a year. I've been in recovery for been sober for 4 years now. We got about 65 clients. We got 4 other care coordinators, and I'm the only peer support right now, but we're getting ready to hire a few more.
Great. That's awesome. We're excited to hear about all those successes that Real Church is having. So, for those of you that don't know Real Church, they're in Bismarck, and Lighthouse is in Fargo. And so, Tony, what has your supervisor done that has helped make you a better peer support specialist?
He's motivated me to get more involved in my own recovery. He's kind of taught me how to be more transparent, how to connect with our clients more, and kind of share my story with them. I've learned a lot just by watching him and how he deals with our clients and just being around him. He's always been there to help me with different situations that I've had with my peers. There's a lot through that way.
That's great.
Chris is back now.
Hi, Chris. I'm glad you could join us.
Yeah.
So Tony was just talking about what you have done to really help make him a better peer sports specialist, and talking about how you advocate and you're a role model and you're really transparent, and you're always there for him. Tony, is there anything that you would like from your agency that you're currently not getting?
I just really like the opportunity to work around other peer support specialists, kind of learn from them and kind of see different ways of doing things. I think that would be an awesome opportunity from the other agencies have.
Awesome. So kind of getting more of that team, more peer support specialists, and even maybe working with other peers in your community to see how they're doing that work.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which I think is something we're going to be working on here soon.
Yeah, sounds like it. I know you guys always got good things going on there. So Chris, thanks for making it back. I know you're multitasking and doing many things at the same time today. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. How would you say supervising peer support specialists is different from supervising non-peer staff?
I think the biggest thing that I noticed is, and this isn't a bad thing, but there's no professional barriers or walls that are there. When we're working with peer supports, the biggest thing that I noticed is they're in the field with a lot of our clients, and they're in the field helping people, and they're really kind of no strings attached with them. I guess that's all I would have to say about that. That'd be the biggest thing that I would notice. And the different languages, I guess. Everybody's got their own language. All the professional entities have their own language and stuff, and that's the same with peer supports too.
Yeah. We've heard that a few times too, just the different languages. And I think Tara was talking about a little bit with even like the generational differences and how they communicate. But from even like peers to non-peers, there's a different way of language. And I know that Lighthouse has actually even done training around like that, like with like slang words and different things like that that other people might not know that a peer picks up on right away or knows about. And so, yeah, there's some of that too, definitely. Great. So, what have you learned about supervising peer support specialists that you would share with a new supervisor?
The biggest thing that I would like to say is the realization that they all come from different backgrounds, and being okay with that. Learning how to be okay with that, and learning how to understand and speak their language, so that way you're able to understand what they're trying to articulate to you. And just yeah, that'd be a big thing that I would have to say.
So understanding also the multitude of pathways to recovery and how those kind of look different for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah, they're all different. They're all going to be really different. And, these aren't professionals. These are just average human beings and citizens that are out there in the middle in the mess. And just coming to that realization, a lot of times I have the training and experience that I got to deal with, and tools that I have to deal with issues and stuff. And sometimes, peer support doesn't. Just understanding that, and they're just there to help articulate and build bridges.
Yeah, building bridges and giving people that hope and connection. That's great.
Uh-huh.
We really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing out there in Bismarck and Lighthouse and Fargo, and we'd like to be able to highlight more groups and all the great work that's happening. So as we continue to do these trainings, if you guys have other groups that you think would be open to this, please send them my way. It's not easy to try to get people to get on camera and talk about things, so we really appreciate that. And I know being put on the spot can be difficult. So kudos to you guys. Is there any questions for Real Church or Lighthouse Church in Fargo from any of the group? Any comments? Chris, Aaron, Tara, Tony, is it okay if you guys put like your contact information in the chat? So if people have questions, they can email you, reach out to you. I think that people would be more apt to do that even outside of this group. But we really, really want to promote that continued collaboration with this group of individuals and continue to keep moving peer support forward. And so we've just tried to highlight a couple of agencies today that have been very supportive of that. Some of the last training we did, we talked about supervising peer supports different. Something somebody said that really stuck with me was a family style environment. When they're supervising peers, there's really that camaraderie with each other. Make sure that you get okay to be open and honest. I just wrote down some of my highlights. You need to be comfortable with being transparent as a supervisor, have an open door. Talked about being that coach or that manager, but not that supervisor. So it's kind of like your choice of words is very, very important. Oh, Erin talked a lot about this, but that time management, that building your schedule, it's not a 9 to 5 job. I've brought this up a couple of times when I've read job descriptions for peer support specialists recently. Many of those peers already have 9 to 5 or 40-hour-a-week jobs, and they're thinking about taking that part-time peer support job. You need to be clear in your job ads that that's a flexible position, or if it's evenings, weekends, if you can be flexible, or just say flexible hours. Please reach out for more information or whatever it might be, because I keep hearing that's a concern or a barrier for especially for part-time peer support jobs. You need to be a little bit clearer on those job ads or what the expectations are, because most of the time I see you guys working some nights, weekends, and evenings, but kind of flexible based on your availability has kind of been how I've experienced it in my real experiences working with peer supports. All right, well, it is already 3 o'clock. So what we're gonna do is take another quick 10-minute break this afternoon. And then we will meet back here at 3:10, and we will be moving forward and completing by 4 o'clock this afternoon. So we'll see you back here then. All right. Well, welcome back. It's about 3:10. I was just saying how fast time goes some days and how fast it goes other days. Today's one of those days where it's just flying by. My household typically gets pretty noisy at about 3:50 p.m. That's when the school bus arrives. So my goal is to going to be kind of wrapping up the formal by 3:50 today. But that doesn't mean that we can't stay online and have discussion. It's just a little bit of a warning about what happens here around 3:50 every day. So, with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and share my content again here with you. All right. And like I had said earlier, as we kind of continue through the last half hour, 45 minutes here, what we'd like to be doing is having discussions and small group discussions talking about what's working, what's not working, any questions or comments that we have. So I just have to catch up here with mine. So session 4 is really around tools for enhancing your supervision. Um, a lot of what we're going to talk about this afternoon either is going to assist you with building job descriptions or assist you with interviewing or assist you with how to find further role clarity with peers that you might already have on board if you've already hired those peers. So Appalachian Consulting Group set up this training, and they've established and helped set up peer support services in 25 plus states. They have resource kits on federal government. They've provided resources to the federal government on how to provide Medicaid billable peer support services. And they've really been a fierce supporter of training a workforce of peer support specialists in the United States. Some of the issues that they've identified that agencies need to work through prior to hiring and certifying providers in the peer support world are what we're going to talk about. One of the most important questions is where and how people in recovery will be used in the behavioral health system. It's very important to create job descriptions for people in recovery who are working as peer providers that ensure they are able to work from the peer recovery lived experience perspective. When creating job descriptions, you need to keep the following values in mind. What they are expected to do on a daily basis allows them to use what they have learned about recovery from their lived experience and certification training. Now, if you're certifying a peer and you have not yet taken the training, we encourage you to register and attend the training. It's a game changer. Um, it will help you in your supervision greatly. It will help you understand the role of that peer as well. Their work responsibilities are based on a set of competencies or teachable skills and knowledge that help them use their lived experience effectively and call forth the strength of the individuals they serve to direct their own recovery. Their roles and expectations are held in a clearly defined job description that honors their life experiences and learned competencies and skills. So, when you're creating those job descriptions, you want to keep those statements in mind. These following questions have proved helpful in thinking this through. They form the basis for a great discussion among administrators, managers, direct care staff, and people in recovery with whom you may want to work or are already working in the system. So if you already have hired peers, you're going to want to include your peers in these discussions. So what values, gifts, and experiences do people in recovery working as a service provider bring to a behavioral health system that people who have not experienced or lived with a mental illness do not or cannot bring? So we've had some of these discussions with our group, right? But what we're talking about is you guys having these discussions internally as an agency. What new positions could we create that would allow for effective use of these values, gifts, and experiences that they bring? What skills, knowledge would the person need to have to be effective in these positions? So, Tara mentioned it, but like motivational interviewing, as most of us know, that can really enhance your experience working in a behavioral health workforce. It has very much personally for me as a professional. Can what we are expecting the peer support specialist to do be done effectively by a person without lived experience of recovery? So remember, Aaron talked about the driving. And so it's not just about the transportation, right? It was more about the experience in the transportation. So you can be driving somebody to go get their driver's license or take their driver's license test, but you can utilize that as an opportunity to engage in dialogue about recovery or barriers or your lived experience and just all those wonderful things that a peer support specialist can do that us without that lived experience can't do. And if you have already hired and you haven't done these things, do them as soon as possible and bring those peer support specialists into that discussion. Okay, we had a good question here. Nancy, suggested rate of pay for a new peer support staff. Everybody does do it a little bit different, but I would suggest, like Christy did state here, that connecting with those local organizations or groups, you can also, look at like Medicaid rates of reimbursement and kind of do some of the work with those to help you develop that. But some of these groups here today, I think, would also have some good input for you. Is there any other questions or comments that you guys have so far? Everybody's hitting that 3 o'clock low. You need some Diet Coke or coffee, something like that, huh? Oh, you got it. Yeah. I could go for a cold cup of coffee, actually. That's usually I save the rest of my pot for the cold in the afternoon. So in these resources that I gave you in this packet, there's also some surveys. So the next few pages in this document are really for your use. So you can use them as an agency to help build job descriptions, to help with evaluation of incorporation of peer support specialist, any of those things. And they're pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just gonna scroll through these. Don't mind me. This survey is great. I think it's a good assessment of how recovery focused your agency is, and you have a peer and a client or a client kind of fill these out to give you some feedback. This one is the peer client form. There's some employee forms in here. This is for administration and management. I'd be very interested to see how these play out and what you could do with a survey like this to make changes in your organization. And then this is for all other staff. Okay, so some of you like tools or guides. I know that I do, kind of like check boxes. So this talks about that journey that we all keep talking about, that supervision is a journey. These are just some really simple guidelines that you can use to help guide your meetings. So it talks about in the beginning, reviewing that job description together. Does it reflect the unique role of that peer support specialist? That would be a good question to ask that peer worker too, to make sure that they get input into that. I know most places can change job descriptions pretty easily, but even getting that feedback if it's a first time peer hire, to get their feedback even on that job description, they're going to have a different perspective than you might have. Establish that working partnership like we talked about, how often we're meeting, how long we're meeting, emergencies coverage, hours, all of those administrative roles that we talked about earlier. Transparency, be explicit, just be very clear. And then there's more boxes there where you as an agency could add whatever you want. And then having those ongoing meetings, goals, progress, job stressors, talking about them. Like it just mentions here, you both have them. Opportunities to reframe, so looking at it from a different point of view. And then that mutual feedback. How's my supervision? Am I giving you enough direction? Do you need more direction? Do you want more guidance? Less direction, less guidance? Here's what I'm seeing. Da 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 da. That mutual reciprocity, that relationship. And I know Aaron talked about this, but like that early conversation between the supervisor and the peer support specialist. Um, what does that peer want if mental health issues arise at work? Beyond what they can expect in that typical supervisory relationship, some of these questions might be helpful in establishing a good relationship with the peer you're supervising. So this one, um, but it might sound simple, but if you're a therapist and you're supervising a peer support specialist, this might be a very important role clarification. Do you understand the difference in supervision and therapy? And I don't necessarily like the way that that says that. I would just probably explain it. It might be an embarrassing question to say, "Oh no, I don't," because I think if you're a therapist and you're supervising a peer support specialist, I would just clarify that role up front. Does anybody have any feedback on that? I'd like to hear about that from you guys that are doing that work if you have any. No? Ideally, a peer is supervised by a peer. Um, However, as we know, some of you, as you're incorporating peers into your agencies, um, that might not be possible yet. But we always like to talk about that. Realistically, the best practice is for a peer to be supervised by a peer. I do also like these questions to use as like a supervision tool. So if you were doing that education piece of your supervision, um, this could this could be some questions for you to ask. I like this one. What have you learned about recovery that could be helpful to a client here? This could be a good interview question. What could I or the agency do to help create opportunities for you to do this? So these could even be good questions for an interview. If you felt the stress of your job was becoming overwhelming, what would you do to take care of yourself? These are great questions for all people that we supervise. Also, what would be some signs that I, as your supervisor, could look for that would let me know you're getting stressed out? We all show stress differently, right? So, if any of you know me, some of you do, some of you don't. I'm a very talkative person, but when I'm stressed, I'm quiet. And so, but when some people are stressed, they're super chatty or they're over the top. Well, I go down, I shut down. So it's important for us to be able to talk about what stress looks like. And if you're already working with peers and you haven't done these things, you should be doing them as soon as possible. So just lots of tools here. Talks a lot again about um, they're just questions that a supervisor may ask to help him or her understand the differences in that clinical education versus that lived experience. I also wrote myself a note here, potential interview questions again. What I'll do today after the conclusion of our training is I'm also going to send you guys some resources and handouts on hiring guidelines. If you're a free through recovery provider, you might have already received these. Um, I want to make sure that you guys have all the resources you need because there is also some questions around like ADA and accommodations and what can we and can't we ask in job interviews. And so I'm trying to connect everybody to those resources they need to be able to make educated decisions for their agencies. I don't know, Lindsay, are you still on? Because you had some experience with that now. Were you able to review that handout on hiring guidelines? Not
I
to put you on the
haven't
spot.
got, well, I haven't got to it yet.
Okay,
We're looking at it as an agency to
great.
see what we do have peer supports here at the agency.
Uh-huh.
Um, we are just in the process of developing questions specifically geared toward peer supports.
Great. Yeah, great. Keep us all informed as you guys keep moving along and anything that you're learning or what's working, what's not working, so we can continue to share. This session 5 really just talks about applying the principles of supervision to peer support. And what all of the literature on the integration of peer support specialists into our behavioral health setting states is supervision and training is the number one intervention for all of these challenges and barriers. So what do I do with role conflict? How do I have a dual relationship? What about confidentiality? I don't feel comfortable in my role. What's my role here? If there's concerns about stability or relapse, lack of empowerment, feels like they can't make those decisions on their own, like they're being micromanaged. So all of these concerns can be dealt with supervision and training. Are there any other concerns that you would add here?
Heather, I just had one thing.
Yeah.
You had talked about the sheet about what we can ask and can't ask in an interview of peers. And actually, a while back, I don't know if it's the same documentation you'll be sending us or not, but I had reviewed some stuff that SAMHSA had put out and before interviewing peers. And one of the things that we learned from that is that there are certain questions you're not supposed to ask. And so we had to learn in our interview process and in our questions how to navigate around some of that. So that way the peers that we were interviewing to work as peer support specialists, the door would be open and they could comfortably self-disclose to a depth that they were comfortable with their lived experience. And so that made the interview process somewhat different than an interview process for other positions. And so I'll just bring that up because there are some guidelines, but to get the information you need to know about the person you're about to hire is still very possible. It's just a matter of asking the questions appropriately and allowing them to answer with what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, anything you have, Erin, that you think would be helpful for the group, if you send that to me as well, that would be great. We just want to keep sharing resources. So, um, yeah, and so like we talked like about if like some of the job ads, like a prerequisite is 1 year of recovery, and so it's like, what does that look like? It's gonna look different for a lot of people. So recovery does not equal sobriety. And so those are interagency discussions that people can have, but hopefully we connect you guys with the right resources to be able to make those decisions about how those interviews will look and sound. Good. Any other challenges or barriers that would jump out at you? I felt like that list was pretty good. Keep moving along here. So writing that job description, many of you already have peers on board. Maybe they have job descriptions, maybe they don't. But you can use this manual to help you build a job description. So with the work on page 7 and then written materials on page 8 and 9, you can usually develop a written job description here that could be pretty general enough, but highlighting their gifts and abilities. Okay, so we are not going to do role plays in a virtual session. It's just a little bit too hard. I would have to have somebody here. I saw that, Tara. I typically love role playing, but it's a little bit hard for me virtually. I'd have to be sitting here with somebody else and having that discussion with them. Um, but these are tools for you as a supervisor to sit down and say, how would I handle this if this came up? Or what would I do in this situation? And how's that conversation going to sound? Because, like we keep mentioning, you have to be okay with navigating in a lot of gray. Another one here. There's about 4 or 5 of them, I believe. I'm just going to scroll through. Sorry if this is making you guys dizzy. Okay. So, session 7, I just really want to talk about any concerns or questions you're leaving with today that we have not yet talked about or you feel that you need more clarity on? So Nancy had brought up the pay. I think that's a very good, valid question. We don't set the pay rate, but many of those agencies will openly share that information with you. Any other concerns that you're leaving here with? Yeah, Sherry. There goes my
Um,
dog. Sorry.
we talked about HIPAA and stuff like that, and as we're both social workers, we both are required by law to report anyone who's suicidal and danger to themselves or others. But as a peer support, how does that work?
That's a good question, Sherry. Each agency typically has policies that dictate how they handle that. Some agencies are not treatment providers. They don't have, 42 CFR, those different rules, or those. It all. You have to really think about that at what agency you're providing those services at, and use those agencies' policies, guidelines to dictate how you react in a situation. So confidentiality to me is of the utmost importance in any behavioral health service that you're providing. And peer support is a behavioral health service, but the way that it's looked at and viewed can vary greatly. And I'm trying to be careful on how I say this, depending on what type of organization or agency that you're working at.
Yeah, because I wonder how, because the social worker may be wanting to take that over more than the peer support when someone makes that.
Yeah, well, HIPAA is compliant with medical records, so um, that would be specific to that.
Yeah, but if a
Mhm,
peer, if I'm working with someone
mhm.
who says makes those comments, then as a social worker, I'm bound by law to do that. But if I'm a peer support, I wouldn't be, but the social worker in me would be. You see the conflict there?
I don't know if I'm exactly following the question when you say comments. What do you mean comments?
Or, you know, how they have threatened to harm themselves or others.
Okay, that is not a HIPAA issue.
Well, not HIPAA, but they
Mhm.
to harm to
Mandated
themselves.
reporting.
Yeah,
Well, as a peer
mandated
support,
or PA, you know, abuse or harm to themselves, others, how we are
Yeah.
mandated reporters. How
I-
does that work as
In
peer?
North Dakota, peer support is a mandated reporter.
Okay, so then there is no
Mhm.
conflict between the two then.
No, if you knew that somebody was potentially going to harm themselves or others, you should, as a peer support, you should be reporting that.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you read the law in relation to mandated reporting, it's very broad. But who is a mandated reporter? But peer supports, so um, they fall under that scope. I'm speaking specifically to North Dakota.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I get told different things, and it's like, you know, when it comes down to it, when I'm a social worker, that kind of takes precedence over anything else to me.
Everybody's safety is what I'm always assessing for, and no matter what role I'm in a service provider. And so I don't, I'd be really, you'd want to use supervision to discuss that. But if somebody's coming to me with concerns about a person they're serving safety or somebody else's safety, to me that would fall under mandated reporting. hmm You're you have a duty to report. Gerald?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, my question, we talk about all this. Well, I haven't really heard, and it probably will happen when someone has to bow out, or you know what I mean. In a situation, you gotta let them go. You know what I mean? I mean,
hmm
some people might get burned out, or there's some conflict going on, and it
hmm
comes to a point where it becomes unmanageable. Let's go that way. And what is the policies and what are the procedures of trying to do it right? It's time for you to go. You can't utilize your because you need help or you're relapsing or what I mean.
hmm
Any number of things so that
And
they bow out gracefully.
I think, Gerald, you can really just reference back to how you handle any employee personnel concerns with anyone in your agency. So whether that be, it starts with that verbal warning, kind of that action plan to get people back on track. Whatever your agency has, I mean, anytime I have an employee that's having concerns, whether a peer support specialist or any type of position, I'm trying to connect them to resources to help them be a better employee. And so yeah, but most agencies internally have those steps. So whether that's to start with that verbal plan and then moving forward with maybe the written plan, if things are getting better after this many days, and then really connecting those employees to resources to help them get better. And if they're not getting better, then eventually, yeah, as with any position, it can lead to a termination in employment. And I really do like what you said about how it can be you want them to bow out gracefully. I think most of us want that for all employees. And so trying to figure out a way to get there if that's possible. But um yeah, that is very difficult. And you can I don't know, agency has an employee assistance program. Sometimes they have very helpful information about some of those concerns. But yeah, we're not going to cover specifically that type of topic, um, but yeah, those are typically going to be more specific to each agency.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up and just,
Yeah,
see.
it's a
It wasn't
hard
covered.
topic.
Right, right. And it wasn't covered on the list, like to see how agencies handle that,
Gerald, I
What-
can try to get you some other resources on that are more human resource specific.
Yeah,
That maybe would be.
I was just bringing it up just as a comment.
Oh,
Nothing.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
I didn't
gotcha.
see it in your outline.
Yeah, we don't cover that, but no.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Tara? No, no question. Okay, no comment. Deb? Deb?
Yes. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. The question, well, it's not even really a question. The biggest problem I've had with peer support specialists will be the HIPAA, the not like participants have a way of saying, hey, Georgianne said that she was working with you and she told me to tell you hi or whatever. Or they'll just start talking about another participant to the peer support. And then the peer support will say, oh yeah, like I know her or whatever. I just feel like that probably the HIPAA has probably been the biggest problem that I've dealt with. And I've talked to the peer supports and said, hey, listen, you cannot like be talking about, hey, I just saw George and we just did this and blah, blah, blah. And there's another person standing there. It's like, you can't do that. And so I'm just wondering if anyone else has had this issue with the peer supports and, really trying to hit it home with, what, you can't, I always say I cannot concur or deny. You'll have to figure that one out yourself, so, but.
Thank you, Deb. So it sounds like you've identified that there's maybe a need for some training around confidentiality.
Yes. Yes, that's been to me it's a huge because it's not been just one, it's been a few
Okay.
peer supports.
Yeah, and that does sound like a supervision or training issue, so it would be one that we could add to that topic. Is there any providers that have any comments or input on that?
I'll say is that I've been that specific thing. I've been pretty fortunate. I haven't had too much really that specific scenario that you brought up with some of the individuals that I currently employ. But it is something that I have seen come up within the peer support specialist community and in the past, and it's something that I've learned. So as a peer support specialist, there's a week-long training. I attended it. All the people that work with me have. And the ethics training, say for a social worker or for a counselor or LAC, is substantially longer. And so oftentimes building those understanding of ethics and the understanding of confidentiality with the peers that you employ is something that does take some work, some patience, some understanding. the one of the things that I will say is coming from the recovery community to working as a professional peer support is a big transition for a lot of individuals, because in the recovery community, there is that connection of association of who and some of the same people that and it's kind of used as a way to build community and fellowship. And sometimes there can be some of that kind of carryover as a peer support starts in their first role as now a member of the professional community, realizing that now, even if somebody starts the conversation and they realize, like we know some of the same people, it doesn't always click automatically. My first response might be like, oh yeah, I know them. And I'm finding that's very upper Midwestern as well. But as a professional, it needs to click in as I can't confirm or deny, or you just kind of nod and let the person talk, and don't really engage in that conversation. And it's been part of an ongoing dialogue with that we keep going all the times. I would say that ethical dialogue we have probably on a regular basis, because often peers find themselves in situations that I couldn't even fathom. Like, stuff happens, and there are situations that a peer support specialist sometimes find themselves in that I couldn't make up. Like, I could never dreamed the of those situations arising. And so that's why the constant dialogue of trying to help that peer learn how to navigate those situations, because no matter role play could come up with some of the scenarios. I can tell you that I've seen come up working with peer support specialists. I don't know if that helps at all, but it's just constant dialogue has been, and that is
That's
a
that
challenge.
supervision piece, Aaron, that dialogue, that having that discussion, that development with that employee that maybe broke that confidentiality, Deb, about
Mhm.
why that's breaking that confidentiality. Because I think it's like what Aaron said, it's like that camaraderie a lot of times too, like, oh my gosh, yeah, or even
Mhm.
sometimes the client we might be working with might say, hey, can you tell so and so hello next time you see them, and to have that discussion with them to say, well, like, actually, not to be rude, but I can't, because I need to maintain your confidentiality too. And so, yeah.
Right, right. I believe I did my best with trying to get the client confidential, anyways, over to them. And I'm just curious, as in that supervision piece, is just to maybe have some different scenarios of confidentiality and going over that. In my policies and procedures, I do have some of that, but probably really stressing it more on a monthly basis about the confidentiality.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Deb. We can definitely try to highlight that, maybe finding some trainings or bringing something to the peer support workforce in North Dakota that would be pertinent to that.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Deb.
Thank you, I appreciate you too.
Cherry?
I was gonna say maybe putting up a thing about the HIPAA rules and regulations might help too in the workplace, and have them review it and go over it might help as well.
Yeah, sometimes reading a policy and signing it. Okay, are there any other comments, questions, anything that you feel? Like I said, I'll send you guys, I put the link to a survey in the chat section. So if you would take that survey, once you take that survey, you'll receive a certificate of attendance. We typically send those out like once a week. So if you take that survey, we'll send you, likely we'll be sending out surveys at the end of this week. Or if you take it later and you don't get your survey for a few days, if you just reach out and we'll let you know, or we can look into it. Here is a question in our chat here. Hello. Like to call an alternative. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Well, that's just a call for action there from Jameson. He's kind of just looking for other people that might be interested in some initiatives that he's interested in creating. What community is that, Jameson? That must be Fargo. you said the old Nestor location. Yeah, great. Well, please reach out. I'm going to go ahead and put an email here in the chat box as well, where you guys can reach out with comments or suggestions. In addition, we'll continue to build and support peer support trainings in North Dakota and additional CEU opportunities. We also know that because of COVID, many people would have normally went to the behavioral health conference, which we did not have this year. So we're going to be having lots of online opportunities and bringing additional people in to support our workforce in North Dakota. So if you guys have ideas or people in mind, or if you've been, anywhere in the nation and you've listened to a speaker or a trainer and you think they'd be a great fit for North Dakota, please send that information our way. We have had some people come to us regarding tobacco and how tobacco cessation and recovery, and there's a lot of research around that, and I think that's kind of a controversial topic for a lot of us in the recovery community, but there's a lot of supportive research around quitting tobacco and length of recovery. And so that's been one idea that's been brought to us for potential for CEUs. So we're very open to ideas. So please send them our way. And it was great seeing you all today. And I'll, the culturally specific peer trainings, Tara, that's a really great one too. We send ideas to Christy, send them to that email, any email or any administrator that you work with in behavioral health, and they'll make sure that you get them our way. We just thank you for your time and all the input and discussions today, and I'm excited to see you again soon. Thank you.